Hello, Muslim friends in the world. The sun had barely risen when the sound of sirens wailed across Jerusalem. From the western hills of the old city, thick black smoke rose into the sky, like the tongue of a giant intent on devouring history. The Mount of Olives was on fire. The flames appeared suddenly, without warning, like long-suppressed rage. Within hours, they consumed trees, crept toward residential areas, and threatened the ancient stone walls that had witnessed thousands of years of history. All units, full alert. This is a top-level fire emergency. The command blared through fire radios. Over 200 firefighters from across Israel, Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, Haifa, gathered with one goal: to stop a blaze unlike anything they had ever faced. Red trucks screamed through the streets, water-spraying helicopters flew low, and the firefighters, drenched in sweat and smoke, fought without rest. But amid the chaos, there was one location that made every heart beat faster. The fire was moving toward the old city, toward the Al-Aqsa Mosque. One of the senior firefighters, Yaakov Mizrahi, stood frozen at the top of the watch post. He watched the fire crawl at an unnatural speed, leaping from one rooftop to another, swirling as if carving a path of destruction straight to Al-Aqsa. "If that mosque burns, the world will explode," he muttered. Not only was it a sacred site for Muslims worldwide, but any harm to it could ignite global conflict. And now this was not a spark. This was hellfire. In the central control room, the digital map showed wind patterns heading directly south, straight toward the mosque. There seemed to be no way to save it. Based on predictions, within 2 hours the fire would reach the outer courtyard. And then, a miracle began. Winds that had been strong and steady suddenly changed direction, without warning, without meteorological cause. Then, dark clouds gathered above, and within 15 minutes, rain began to fall. Not heavy, but enough to slow the fire. Odd, because the weather forecast had shown clear skies for 3 more days. Fire units stationed closest to the mosque reported something even stranger. "We were standing at the north gate. The fire surrounded us from 3 sides. We felt its heat, but it never crossed the mosque's fence. As if something invisible was holding it back." Aerial footage from helicopters showed an even more baffling image. The fire had formed a half-circle, curving around the Al-Aqsa Mosque, without touching it at all. The firefighters were exhausted. They slumped against their trucks, bodies covered in ash, but their eyes were distant. They had seen many things in their careers: gas explosions, collapsed buildings, charred remains. But that day, they had seen something beyond explanation. Yaakov, known for his stubbornness and disbelief in anything spiritual, just sat quietly, staring at the mosque from afar. "Why didn't it burn?" he whispered. No one answered, but in each of their hearts, a door began to creak open. A door long locked by routine, doubt, and prejudice. That day, it wasn't just the trees that were scorched. Old certainties were cracking, and from the ashes of curiosity, another kind of fire began to burn, a fire of searching for truth. 3 days had passed since the Great Fire. Jerusalem had begun to quiet down, but not the hearts of the firefighters who had witnessed something unexplainable at the Al-Aqsa Mosque. At the Western District Fire Station, the atmosphere was unlike any other day. No casual jokes in the break room, no talk of hoses, ladders, or new trucks. There was only silence, and murmurs about one question that haunted them all. Why didn't the fire touch Al-Aqsa? Some tried to reason it out with science, humidity levels, shifting winds, atmospheric pressure. But the deeper they searched for answers, the deeper they fell into a more profound question. Was this just chance? Or was there something greater at work? Among them, Ariel Ben Shimon, a 29-year-old firefighter with a reputation for bravery and sarcasm, was the most disturbed. Known as a skeptic, even an atheist, he now sat quietly in the locker room, clutching his water bottle, lost in thought. "I stood just 20 meters from the northern gate of the mosque," he finally said one afternoon over lunch. "The fire came at us from 3 sides, but when I looked at that gate, I felt like something was standing there. Not a person, not equipment, but something unseen." No one laughed. No one dismissed him, because deep down many had felt it too. The next day they began to gather, quietly, without uniforms, without trucks, not for a drill, not for a shift, but to return to that place. They needed to see the Al-Aqsa Mosque again, not as firefighters, but as human beings. They arrived in small groups, some in disguise to avoid attention. Some entered through Damascus Gate, others from the southwest side. They scattered, then reunited silently in the outer courtyard of the mosque. Al-Aqsa stood still, untouched, peaceful. There were no signs of fire, no damage, just a strange, overwhelming tranquility under the late afternoon sun. An elderly man sat in the courtyard reading a worn Quran. He noticed them, dozens of unfamiliar faces, their eyes restless, and smiled as if he had been waiting for them. "You didn't come just to see this mosque," he said calmly, without being asked. "You came because your hearts are burning from something no logic can explain." Ariel stepped forward, his voice barely a whisper. "Why didn't the mosque burn?" The man looked at him deeply, then spoke gently. "Because it is not we who protect this place, but the Lord of the heavens and the earth. And perhaps he wished to show you something." That day they didn't say much. They simply sat, listening to verses of the Quran being recited in the breeze. Their hearts felt strange, heavy, yet warm. Some wept silently. Others closed their eyes, trying to understand a feeling they had never known. They didn't know what to call it. A miracle? A sign? Guidance? But one thing was certain. They could no longer pretend this was just coincidence. And without realizing it, their steps across the mosque's courtyard were not just physical. They were the first steps toward the greatest transformation of their lives. That afternoon, the sky above Jerusalem felt different. Thin clouds lingered above the Al-Aqsa Mosque, like a soft veil sent down from the heavens. The courtyard wasn't crowded, but the aura that surrounded it was powerful, calm, yet soul-stirring. Beneath the shade of an ancient olive tree in the outer courtyard, more than 100 firefighters sat in a quiet circle. No uniforms, no rank, just men, ordinary men, who had come carrying wounds, questions, and a deep unrest they had never felt before. Before them sat the same man they had met 2 days earlier, Sheikh Abdullah, the elder imam of the mosque. His face was serene, his eyes penetrating, and his words were like dew falling upon a dry and thirsty soul. "Many come here out of curiosity," he said gently, "but you came with wounds. And in this world, wounds can bring a person to truth far deeper than 1,000 books." Ariel sat closest to the front. His eyes were red, his cheeks stained with dried tears. He no longer cared about appearances, rank, or who might see. A storm was raging inside him, a battle between doubt and a truth that had begun to speak. "Sheikh, I saw the fire hesitate to touch this place," he said, voice trembling. "I've lived by logic my entire life, but that day, everything I believed shattered." Sheikh Abdullah offered a soft smile. "Logic is a door, but a door is only useful if someone opens it from the inside. Perhaps it is your heart that God has finally opened." He opened a small, weathered Quran and recited, "Whoever is saved from the fire and admitted to paradise has indeed triumphed." and this worldly life is nothing but deceptive enjoyment. Surah Ali Imran 185. After the verse was read, silence fell again. It was not awkward, but sacred, as though each word echoed deep inside every man present. Then suddenly, Ariel stood. "If this truly is guidance," he said quietly, "if this light is from God, then I don't want to run from it anymore." He lowered his head. His hands trembled. Then, with a clear and steady voice, he declared, "Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah." I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. Soft takbirs echoed from the mosque caretakers nearby. Gentle, reverent. Then, one by one, others began to rise. 5, 20, 40, 67. By the end of that afternoon, 207 firefighters had embraced Islam. Not out of pressure, not out of persuasion, but because the great fire they had battled on the hillside had burned away something deeper, the doubts in their hearts. The sun began to set over the golden dome of the rock. Under its soft glow, the courtyard of Al-Aqsa stood as a silent witness to hearts once hardened, now softened by light. They didn't yet know how to explain this change to their families, their co-workers, or the world. But they knew this. They had found a new home, a place where fire no longer burned, but illuminated. The days that followed were anything but easy. News of the 200-plus firefighters who had embraced Islam spread like wildfire. At some fire stations, they were mocked. Online, some claimed it was propaganda. Others accused them of betrayal of their identity, their people, their nation. But they stayed calm, because only they had stood at the gates of Al-Aqsa and seen the fire bow back. Only they had heard the unseen voice that shook their souls louder than any alarm. And only they knew that, for the first time in their lives, their hearts were truly alive. Ariel ben Shimon was now known as Ahmad ben Nur. Still a firefighter, he started every morning reading the Quran before his shift. He began teaching his fellow new Muslims how to read Arabic letters, and he was no longer just saving bodies from fire. He was learning to save souls from a much deeper flame. Many began attending weekly lessons at Al-Aqsa. They sat among Palestinian children, learning stories of prophets they once thought were mere myths. Now, those stories guided their lives. Yehuda Zakkai, once a staunch atheist, now went by Yusuf. In a private interview, he said, "We thought we were there to save the mosque, but the truth is, it was the mosque that saved us." At first, most of them kept their conversions hidden. Some were rejected by family. Some were kicked out of their homes. But over time, many families softened. They saw a new light in their sons, brothers, and fathers. A peace that wasn't fake. A gentleness that hadn't been there before. This story never made national headlines. But in the alleys around Al-Aqsa, among mosque caretakers, scholars, and local Palestinians, the story spread quietly but deeply. It became a whisper of hope, a living proof that hearts can change, even from the most unexpected places. 1 year later, they stood once again in the courtyard of Al-Aqsa, 207 men in simple white clothing, joining thousands for Friday prayer. From the loudspeakers, a supplication echoed, "O Allah, you sent fire upon our hills, but perhaps only to light the hearts of these men." And as the takbir echoed, they cried, not tears of regret, but tears of knowing that the fire had burned away not trees, not homes, but the masks they once wore, masks that had hidden their true selves, men searching for God. They came as firefighters, but they left as bearers of light, not to burn the world, but to illuminate it.